picture that I'm going to show you at the end of this video has caused a lot of technological issues with the person who sent it and myself, so I just wanted to give you that warning. This is what they and myself believe is a cryptid that was caught on camera. Do with that information what you will. If you don't want to watch this one, I totally understand it, and if you are in an area that's more prominent to those things, I would kind of suggest against it if it's at night. They said they sent this story in because they want everyone to know that these things can be anywhere, as this took place in Canada. So let's get into it. So this story doesn't belong to the person that sent it to me. It actually happened to their cousin, and they told it to me. So the cousin is laying in bed trying to go to sleep one night, and they hear this loud noise. Like, it is so loud that it jolts them up and it jolts their dad up, who runs into the room and is like, "Did you hear that?" So they say, "Yeah, I heard it. I don't know what it is." And the dad's a firefighter, and he was like, "I think that was a car crash and we need to go check," because it's a small town. He just wanted to be helpful. The cousin's like, "I am going too. I'm not staying in this house." So they put on their jackets, they open the door, and they are met with what sounds like scratching on the top of their house. Now, they live in a wooded area. It wouldn't be weird for an animal to be up there scratching. But then they look into the trees and notice something strange. And the cousin locks eyes with it, which causes it to start wobbling towards them. They use the word wobbling. I imagine like a baby deer trying to walk for the first time type of walk. The dad and the cousin quickly get inside, lock the door, and eventually end up falling asleep. I don't know how, but they eventually do. And when they do, they sleep for an entire 24 hours. And when they wake up 24 hours later, they are covered with weird bumps and scratches. Now, they didn't tell me how they got this picture. I don't know if it was from a trail cam or what, but here is the picture that they said goes with the story that they captured. I did have weird stuff happen when I tried to save it. I don't know, but here is that picture. Like I said, you've been warned. If you don't want to see it, scroll on, but here it is.
Most people confuse being alone with loneliness. It's a peculiar narrative of modern life which sees somebody single as sad and somebody living alone as somehow incomplete. It's part of a mindset which obsessively feels the need to fill the empty space. But being single is not some broken premarital state we have to endure, but learning to be alone is one of the most important things anybody can do. This is what Schopenhauer talked about when he talked about the idea of solitude. Solitude is the ability to be at home with yourself. It's to spend time with yourself and find the company enjoyable. To be solitary is to retreat into yourself and to take great pleasure in what you have to offer. When we're solitary, we can reach into a communion with the self. We can think as freely and as honestly as we like. It's only when we separate ourselves from others and remove distractions that we find the space to meditate on ourselves. In solitude, a great many things are discovered. For Schopenhauer, it's not the single or solitary person who is broken, but rather the person who is scared to be alone. It's the person who cannot rest with themselves. A person who flits from relationship to relationship or who seeks to deafen the silence with noise is the one who needs help. A person who's perfectly comfortable with a table for one is not cause for concern. It's a cause for celebration. A person who cannot love themselves will find it hard to love others, and a person who cannot be at peace alone will find it hard to be at peace at all.
The next time you eat a kiwi, just know that that kiwi is trying everything to fight back. That burning and itching sensation that loads of people get makes so much more sense once we look at it under a microscope. You've got these idioblast cells inside the kiwi that are packed full of these tiny little needles. When you bite into the kiwi, these idioblast cells get damaged, the needles get released and poke into the inside of your mouth, causing that itching.
There's only one piece of advice for people who insist on sleeping on their stomachs because it's so comfortable, but it's not really, is whatever you do, do not use any sort of pillow. You're already twisting your head all the way left or all the way right. When you use a pillow, you're just making it worse. You're hyperextending here. If you wake up with dead arms or tingly fingers, it is absolutely the nerve damage caused by this lying position.
There are 12 laws of the universe, and you may or may not have heard of them, but the difference between the 12 laws of the universe and the religious commandments, let's say the 10 commandments, for example, is that you are bound by one, and the other one, you don't actually have to pay any attention to whatsoever. Of course, that's going to offend some religious people who feel, how dare you blaspheme the Holy Bible and tell us that the 10 commandments are things that we can just do away with. Easy. People do away with them all the time. People do commit murder. People do lie and steal and cheat. and adulterate and falsely worship things that are not themselves. And even further is the fact that we actually don't need them to dictate anything in our lives or about our lives, because we are born with the innate nature of understanding that murder is bad, lying is bad, cheating people is bad. However, because in this plane you have been made to believe that the true source of all that is not within you and is actually of this world and outside of you, you believe that you need a God to tell you how to conduct your soul. Even though your religious text tells you the true source of all that is, if you want to call that God, dwells in you. You are the temple. You believe that you are born evil, and so you go seeking religion. You go seeking the God of this material world, and you even baptize yourself in water. And I'll say rebaptize yourself in water, because you come in the womb, baptized in the Holy Spirit, in the womb of water, which in your religious text is called the Matrix. Which brings me to my main point, the 12 universal laws of the Matrix. The cosmos, the universe, nature. First law is the most important, and the reason why we are here in this plane to begin with. And it is the law of divine oneness, which tells us that everything is not only connected, but everything is the same thing, manifested differently, which is actually substantiated by the religious text, which tells you that you do well to know that God is one. Demons know also and tremble, which is the true meaning of the verse that Christians often misquote to believe that demons tremble at the mention of Jesus' name. Nowhere in their text does it say that. It says that they tremble at oneness. Second law of the universe is the law of vibration, which tells us that all things, inanimate and animate, intangible and intangible, have vibration. And that vibration exists within a specific frequency. Imagine being tuned into a radio station, which is a frequency. When you're turned onto the hip hop and R&B frequency, you're only going to get music or vibrations that match the frequency of the hip hop and R&B station. Meaning, in order to get pop, alternative rock, you're going to have to change the station or the frequency. Which brings me to the third law, which is the law of correspondence, which tells you that your external reality is a direct result of your internal thoughts. So in order to align with a specific vibration or frequency, your thoughts have to match it, which is the perfect segue into the fourth law, which is the law of attraction. Likeness attracts likeness. Of course, we have been taught that opposites attract. Lie. To the person who's going to say, well, in physics, we do see that opposites attract. I would say to that person, the difference is that yes, we are electric. However, we are internally electric, meaning that everything that happens in our reality comes inside outside. However, when you're talking about electromagnetism, you're talking about something that endures outside forces. It's outward inward, meaning they are only attracted to each other as a result of a magnetic field. Without those outside forces, it wouldn't look like that. The fifth law is the law of inspired action, which essentially just states that when you are aligned with who you truly are, inspiration will come to you. You don't have to force it. Because again, remember, you are the true source of all that is. You are creative because you create. The sixth law, which is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, states that everything is fluctuating and growing. Therefore, if it lacks evolvement, change, something is wrong. The seventh law is the law of cause and effect, which states that for every cause, there is obviously an effect. Our thinking creates the cause, and our experiences are the effect. The unironically eighth universal law, and my personal favorite, is the law of compensation, what some people call karma. You reap what you sow. What you give to others shall be given to you. What you withhold from others shall be withheld from you. It is unavoidable. It is a universal law. Which is okay, because the ninth universal law tells us that everything is relative anyway. We perceive the world how we want to. Because the 10th law of the universe tells us that there is a law of polarity, meaning everything in the universe has an opposite, we know that there are vast realities existing. But don't fear, don't fret, don't create anxiety in your thought processes. Flow like water, because that is the 11th law of the universe, which is the law of rhythm. Everything has a nature and a season. You in your life have seasons too. At a collective level, we have seasons. Astrology. which is substantiated by the religious text, which tells you that you should use the sun, the moon, the stars for signs and seasons. Genesis 1. And the final law of the universe, which is equally as important as the first, is that there is a law of gender. And that law is quite contrary to what you've been taught, which is to follow social constructs about femininity and masculinity that are not real because they are constructed, crafted, created. The universal law tells you, however, that life is only in alignment for you when your masculine and feminine identities come together. To exist only in one is to exist as half of yourself. Nothing done halfway can reach completion. Here's the most important nugget of truth for all of those who stayed through this very long, very long video. I have previously said that they are bound by the laws of the cosmos, which requires them to tell us the truth. Throughout the course of this very long video, where I have described all 12 of the universal laws, not in a single one did I reveal that they are required to tell us the truth. So let me explain. If they, being the powers that be, tell you the truth, then they believe they get to escape the laws of the universe, that they will avoid the law of compensation. They will avoid karma because they told you. And since they told you, you willed what happened to you. You gave compliance, you agreed, you cooperated in your destruction. They hide the truth in plain sight. They put it in the movies, the TV shows, the entertainment, the sports, the news. They put it in the papers, the books, on social media. And most importantly, they put it in the religious texts because they have to. Unfortunately for them, who are metaphorically deemed the fallen angels and therefore cannot reascend into heaven, aka the height of consciousness, they don't know what we know, which is that unfortunately for them, they did not escape the laws of the universe. Ashe.
You can avoid cavities for the rest of your life if you follow these 3 steps. The first thing to know is that cavities are very common, but you don't have to get them. They are a disease. They are an end result of something going wrong in the mouth, and we can prevent them and even reverse them in some cases. The first step is you want to change your diet. We eat too many processed simple carbs, and this is bad news for your mouth. So the first thing to do is reduce not only sugar that everyone talks about, but the simple carbohydrates that sit in your teeth especially. Crackers are usually the biggest culprit of this because we assume they're healthier, so we snack on them, we eat them slower, which is actually worse for the mouth. But they sit in the teeth for hours and hours until you brush, and the bad bacteria in your mouth feasts on them. So the best thing to do is reduce a lot of the processed carbohydrates that we're eating and fill those instead with whole-based foods that contain vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin A. You have your minerals that are actually going to help to remineralize the teeth, things like calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and even eating foods like pre and probiotics, all are going to help the ecosystem within your entire mouth. So changing your diet is step 1. Now the second thing to do is work on your oral hygiene. Now this is number 2 because if your diet's really poor, brushing, flossing, all that stuff can really help, but you're fighting an uphill battle. How many people do you know that have flossed and brushed forever and they have still gotten cavities? It's because their diet is likely the biggest issue. But when that's out of the way, you actually want to focus on the right timing and duration of your oral hygiene. Are you brushing for 2 minutes twice a day? In the morning when you first wake up, and then right before you go to bed? Around every 12 hours is ideal, but are you spending 2 minutes? Are you actually pointing the toothbrush towards the gum line? Are you taking your time? Are you flossing at least once a day prior to brushing? So those are the 2 big things. Are you really taking your time with the floss? Are you hooking it in a C shape around the tooth, or are you not? Lastly, you can even tongue scrape as well. Does a great job at removing food debris and bad bacteria from the tongue, which is going to help with bad breath. But ultimately, that's something else that people generally don't do, and it helps a lot. Now that we've gotten oral hygiene and we've gotten our diet out of the way, the last step to prevent cavities is focusing on your breathing while you're asleep. When you're asleep, you have a lowered saliva production, and this creates an environment that's very easy for cavities to form, at least much easier than the rest of the day.
But if you're sleeping with your mouth wide open, your whole mouth is drying out even more so, again creating a worse environment to develop cavities. So you want to address how you breathe. I personally would breathe with my mouth open every night if I didn't use something called mouth tape. I know it's super weird to some people, but I've been doing it for many years, and it's the only thing that helped me to close my mouth while sleeping. And one thing I noticed right away was my bad breath went away because I stopped the drying out of my entire mouth. So I use that usually every night. There's a few root causes for why you might be mouth breathing at night, but either way, you want to focus on this and reduce this, because if you can do that, you're really helping your body and your mouth the entire night while you're asleep. Do these 3 things from now on as best you can, and you will be much less likely to develop cavities going forward.
Good night, Miss Patty. Miss Patty?
Pray before every decision, big or small. God is in the little details of your life.
Women who treat you poorly are not going to treat you better, even if you try harder.
So this person says, does anyone understand why we were able to go to the moon in the 1960s with basic computers, but it's still difficult to do now? Shouldn't it cost like $1 million and be done this week? That's a fair question, but there are more factors involved than you probably think. And number 1 is money. This is NASA's budget throughout the years, and it clearly peaked during the Apollo era where they got just over 4% of the entire federal budget. Currently, it's less than 1%. Let's give it some context. In the 1960s, the Apollo mission was about $25 billion. Adjusted for inflation today, that's about $257 billion. The Artemis mission, which will land people back on the moon this decade, will be about $100 billion. Still far less than what the value of this one was. It's also fair to say that in the 60s, the only program NASA cared about was Apollo, compared to now, which has so many more programs with less funds to allocate to. Bottom line, it'll always be expensive as fuck to send humans anywhere, and once the mission was accomplished, what was the need to send them back? We could just send cheaper robots. An implication that I'm getting from this person's question is something that I've been asked before, that how did we conveniently lose the technology to go back? Well, we didn't lose it, it was retired. Why would we use the same technology to go back? I mean, why not just use an old school ass car? My point is, the Saturn V rocket served its purpose for its time. It's the best we could do in the 60s. And now we have better technology like SpaceX Starship, which unlike Saturn V is a reusable rocket which will cut costs down over time. So that kind of sums it up. I hope I answered your question, but bottom line, and in my opinion, I think the biggest factor is money. If we had the kind of budget like we did in the 60s, I think we would have been to Mars by now.
If a girl ever asks you, how are you, over text, whatever, don't just respond and say, good, or great, how are you? That's really boring. In fact, I have a way that you can answer this question and even turn it into a date. So if she asks, how are you? You're gonna text back and say, ready for a blank. Okay, so what does that mean? Anything that you're interested in doing, even if you're not gonna go do it. So you can say, oh, ready for a great cocktail, ready for Netflix and just chilling out, ready to hang out with some friends, ready to read a good book, ready to go bowling, whatever it is, whatever you like, just say that. That's going to spark more interesting conversation. And you can say, ready for a glass of wine, want to join me? Anything that you're interested in doing, at the end, just say, want to join me, and then set up a date.
You guys see that shadow?
Where?
Where are the clouds? Where are the...
Now I know goddamn well. It's raining in every spot but on that damn Cheeto. Do y'all see this shit?
Using these tires would be a death wish. Yeah guys, using the tires in this video would be an absolute death wish. So I came across this video on the internet, and as you can tell, this guy starts off with a old worn out tire. As you can tell in the beginning of the video, this tire is worn out and definitely needs thrown away. If you look closely, there's really no tread left at all. But this guy uses this little hand tool to literally carve out new tread. He basically just goes over the old lines and remakes the tread that was already on the tire when it was new. However, there's a big difference from this tire when it was new compared to now. And you might be thinking this guy's doing a good thing because he's trying to recycle instead of buying new. But you see, this tire actually has very little rubber left, which makes this tire super dangerous. You see, when a tire gets worn out like this one was, it really only has about 0.2 to 0.4 inches of rubber left. And this guy's carving into what little rubber is left. And simply just hitting a little bump could blow these tires.
Oh my god. You guys aren't gonna believe the new huge Mandela effect. I don't even know, I can't wrap my head around it because this is fresh. This isn't like one of the old ones. Nelson Mandela died in prison. No, he didn't. It's not one of those oldies. And trust me when I tell you, I have searched on all of the search engines from all over the world, not just in English. I even tried in Italian because I didn't believe it. Holy mother of... I can't. Like, this one's huge. Do y'all know the famous statue? In Europe, we call him Il Pensatore, the thinker, right? You know, the thinker. The thinker. The thinker, right? What in the world is happening? And this Mandela effect is just from a day or two ago. Here, check this out. What? What? No. Which thinker do you remember? Because now, in this timeline, he has his hand on his chin? No, never. I'm an expert in ancient history. I'm an artist. Art. I do this. This is my niche. This is my expertise. Never, ever, never. So I'm like, wait a second. Maybe these are new statues. So, like, my brain is still trying to give a plausible, logical explanation. Maybe these are just new statues. I'll get them. Let me Google it in Italian, you know. Even in Italian. Il pensatore. Il pensatore. So now, the thinker, il pensatore, is like this. No. So let's do this. Are you from my timeline, where the thinker, the pensatore, was like this? Or are you from the new timeline, where he's like this? What? This is fresh, people. This is a fresh, brand new Mandela effect. This is not just a logo or missing pieces on videos. This is huge. This statue, this art piece, this mythological story of the thinker has been around ancient Rome, ancient Greece. Like, this is that kind of ancient. We shifted again. So which thinker do you remember?
In case you didn't know, you can increase the birth of new cells in your brain to improve learning, memory, and overall thinking abilities. The science term for this is neurogenesis, and here are a few ways that you can do it. The first way to boost the birth of new brain cells is through Zone 2 aerobic exercise. Zone 2 exercise has been shown to boost BDNF in the brain, which is a protein that can help neurons grow. Another way to increase the birth of new brain cells and improve your thinking abilities is through regular meditation. Meditation can also boost BDNF levels, and it can also enhance neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to rewire. Another way to improve your thinking abilities is to eat foods high in polyphenols. Blueberries are a great example of this type of food. Another thing is sunlight. Sunlight can boost our BDNF levels. You gotta go out in the sun. Sunlight has so many benefits for our bodies, I could probably talk for 2 hours about it.